The sky above the plains was pale gold when Ethan Carter waited at the tiny train station that morning. He had polished his boots, trimmed his beard, and brushed the dust from his hat 3 times already. He was not a man used to waiting for anyone. But today was different. Today, the mail train from St. Louis was bringing the woman who was supposed to become his wife. He had sent letters for months, written carefully with ink-stained hands after long days tending cattle. The agency promised him a bride, an honest woman willing to live a hard but simple life on the frontier. The thought of someone waiting for him, someone who chose to come west, had kept him company through many lonely nights. He was not expecting beauty or wealth, just kindness, warmth, and a gentle voice in a quiet home. The whistle of the train broke the silence of the prairie. Ethan straightened his back, heart thudding like a galloping horse. A handful of passengers stepped down. Businessmen, a preacher, a woman with a crying baby. Then came another woman, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a pale blue dress that looked a size too tight around her chest and arms. Her hat was pinned crookedly to her thick auburn hair. She spotted him instantly. Her face lit up, and before Ethan could move, she waved with such enthusiasm that dust puffed from her sleeve. "Mr. Carter?" she called out, her voice strong and cheerful. Ethan froze. She was not the woman in the photograph. In fact, she looked nothing like her. The photo he had received months ago showed a slim, shy-looking girl named Clara. This woman was built like she could wrestle a steer. She towered nearly a head above him. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She strode forward, carrying a small suitcase in one hand and a large bundle in the other. "Oh, I'm so happy to finally meet you. I've been sitting on that train for 3 days, and the seat was not made for someone my size, I tell you," she said with a laugh. Her handshake nearly lifted Ethan off his feet. Miss Clara?" he managed. Her smile faltered for a second, then she blinked. "Oh, heavens, I should explain. My name is Martha. Clara is my younger sister. Well, she got cold feet at the last moment. She couldn't bring herself to travel west. The agency had already bought the ticket, and they said you'd paid everything in advance, so I thought, maybe I could come instead. I'm strong, I can work, and I don't eat much when I'm busy. I hope you don't mind too much." Ethan just stared at her, his hat nearly slipping from his hands. A mix of surprise and confusion swirled inside him. He had ordered a male bride, but the one who arrived wasn't the woman he had written to. He could have turned her away. He had every reason to, but as he looked at her, standing there in the sunlight with her hopeful eyes and awkward grin, something in him softened. This woman had traveled hundreds of miles alone to meet a man she'd never seen, and she stood there with courage in her eyes. "No, ma'am," he said slowly. "I don't mind." Martha's shoulders relaxed, and she let out a breath that sounded half like a laugh, half like a sigh. "Thank the Lord for that," she said. They loaded her bags onto his wagon and began the long ride back to his ranch. The road stretched dusty and endless. For a while, neither spoke. Ethan's mind spun with questions. Why hadn't the agency written? Why had she really come? And what in the world was he supposed to do now? Martha broke the silence first. "This land is beautiful," she said softly, looking out over the endless grass. "It feels free. I've lived in the city all my life. Too many walls. Too many people telling you what you can't do. I wanted a place where I could breathe." Her words were honest, without shame or fear. Ethan glanced at her again. Her face wasn't what he had imagined. It was stronger, fuller, sun-kissed in places. But there was something sincere about her smile. At the ranch, the horses whinnied at their arrival. His dog Bandit barked and wagged his tail. Martha climbed down, dusted her dress, and looked at the wooden house standing quiet under the afternoon sun. "It's perfect," she said. "It's small," Ethan said, embarrassed. "So am I. In spirit," she said with a grin that caught him off guard. She rolled up her sleeves before he could protest and started helping unload supplies from the wagon. She carried sacks of feed like they were nothing. When the barn door stuck, she shoved it open with a single push. Ethan had lived around strong men all his life, but seeing her work left him speechless. As the sun dipped low, he built a fire outside and made coffee while she prepared stew from the supplies she brought. The scent filled the air, simple, warm, and rich. They sat by the fire, the flames lighting their faces. "You thought I'd be smaller, didn't you?" Martha asked suddenly, her tone gentle, almost teasing. Ethan almost choked on his coffee. Well, maybe," he admitted. "But that's not what matters." "What does?" she asked, tilting her head. He looked at the stars above them, scattered like silver dust across the deep blue. "That you came," he said quietly. "Most people wouldn't have." Martha was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Maybe it was fate. Maybe Clara wasn't meant for this life, but I think I was. The fire cracked softly between them. Bandit curled at her feet. The night air grew cool, and Martha wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. Ethan looked at her from the corner of his eye. He didn't see the wrong bride anymore. He saw someone strong, someone who had crossed half the country for a chance at a new life. When they went inside, Martha hesitated at the doorway. "Should I sleep in the barn?" she asked carefully. "No," Ethan said. "You can take the room on the left. It was meant for you." Her eyes softened and she nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." "Call me Ethan," he said. She smiled faintly and disappeared into the room. Ethan sat by the dying fire, staring at the wall for a long time. He had expected a small, shy woman who would fit into his quiet life without changing much. Instead, he'd been given Martha, big-hearted, strong-handed, and full of laughter that echoed through the lonely house. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the silence. That night, when the wind moved across the plains, he thought he heard Martha humming softly in the other room, a low, gentle tune that sounded like hope. And somehow, Ethan smiled in the dark. Morning sunlight fell across the plains as Ethan stepped outside to fetch water from the well. The air was cool, the sky soft blue, and a faint smell of coffee drifted from inside the house. He paused for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of life around him. The creak of the barn door, the horses snorting, and the clatter of pans from the kitchen. Martha was already awake. She had been awake before him every morning since she arrived. Somehow, she filled the small house with her energy like sunshine that refused to fade. He could hear her humming again, that same tune she had hummed the night she first came. When he walked back inside, he found her kneeling near the stove, stirring a pot of thick porridge. Her sleeves were rolled up, and a few loose strands of auburn hair had fallen across her forehead. She smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, Ethan. I hope you like oats. I added a bit of molasses. My pa used to say it makes even plain food feel rich." "Smells fine to me," Ethan said with a faint grin, setting the bucket down. They ate together in easy silence, the kind that felt comfortable, not awkward. Outside, the day stretched wide and bright. After breakfast, Martha insisted on helping with chores. She cleaned the chicken coop, patched a section of fence, and even joined Ethan in checking the cattle down near the creek. She worked without complaint, laughing when mud splashed her boots or when a calf tried to nibble her sleeve. By midday, Ethan realized something unexpected. He enjoyed her company. She talked often, but her words were never useless. She told stories about her hometown, her younger siblings, the bakery she used to work in, and the way she had always dreamed of open skies. Her laughter came easy, and it filled the empty spaces of the ranch that once felt too quiet. Still, he couldn't ignore how the townsfolk looked at them when they went into town a few days later. Whispers followed them down the main street. Ethan was a respected man, quiet but known. Martha, with her tall frame and confident stride, caught every eye. Some smiled politely. Others didn't bother to hide their smirks. "She's a big one, ain't she?" a voice muttered behind them as they passed the general store. Ethan's jaw tightened, but Martha didn't seem to notice. She was too busy admiring a shelf of fabric in the window. "That blue one would make a fine curtain," she said cheerfully. Ethan looked at her, then at the curious faces around. He took a step closer to her and said loud enough for all to hear, "If you want it, we'll buy it." She turned to him surprised, and he smiled just a little. That night, as they rode home, Martha said quietly, "You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" Ethan asked. "Stand up like that. I've been called worse in my life. I stopped listening a long time ago." He looked ahead at the fading sun. "Maybe so, but they should know what kind of woman you are. Not everyone could do what you've done." Martha didn't reply, but he saw her eyes glisten in the orange light. The days passed, each one drawing them closer. The ranch began to change under her care. She planted flowers along the porch, fixed the squeaky floorboard, and taught Ethan how to make biscuits without burning them. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch watching the stars come out, talking about everything and nothing. One night, a storm rolled across the plains. Thunder echoed, wind roared, and rain hit the roof like a drum. The horses grew restless, and Ethan rushed out to secure the barn doors. Martha followed with a lantern, refusing to stay inside. Together they fought the wind, shouting instructions over the storm. When it finally passed, they stood drenched and breathless, laughing like fools under the dripping eaves. Martha looked up at him, rainwater glistening on her cheeks. "We did it," she said softly. "We did," he said, and for a moment neither moved. It was quiet, just the sound of rain easing away. Something warm stirred between them, something unspoken but strong. After that night, something in their hearts shifted. Ethan began to look forward to her laughter more than anything. He caught himself watching her hands as she worked, her steady movements, her soft smile when she thought he wasn't looking. One morning, while repairing a saddle, he asked, "Martha, do you ever regret coming here?" She paused from washing clothes and looked at him through the open doorway. "Regret?" She repeated, "No. I thought I might at first. I thought you'd send me back on the next train. But now, no, Ethan. This place feels like home." He nodded, pretending to focus on his work, but his chest felt full in a way he hadn't known before. Summer faded into autumn. The prairie turned gold and red. Together they harvested what little garden they'd grown. One evening, they drove the wagon to town for supplies, and the townsfolk greeted them differently this time. People had begun to see what Ethan already knew. Martha wasn't just strong. She was kind, steady, and brave. She helped at the church, brought food to sick neighbors, and always had a smile for every child that crossed her path. On the way back, she said quietly, "Do you think people still talk about us?" "Maybe," Ethan said. "But now they talk with respect." She looked out over the fading light, the horizon painted in orange and pink. "I never thought I'd find peace here. I never thought anyone would want me as I am." Ethan's hands tightened on the reins. "Then maybe you were meant to come here all along," he said. "Maybe I was the one who needed you." Martha turned to look at him. "You mean that?" He nodded. Every word. The road home was long and quiet, but their silence was warm, filled with understanding. When they reached the ranch, Martha stepped down first and looked around. The little house, the horses, the wide land under the stars. "It's not fancy," she said, smiling, "but it's ours." That night they sat together by the fire again, just like the first evening. Martha brought out an old photograph, the one Ethan had first received, showing Clara's face. She placed it gently on the table. "She married someone back east," Martha said softly. "She wrote me last week. She said she's happy. I think we both found where we belong." Ethan looked at the picture, then at Martha. "Maybe it was never a mistake," he said. "Maybe it was a blessing in disguise." Martha smiled, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I think so too." Outside, the wind brushed through the tall grass, whispering softly. The stars shone bright above the plains. Ethan reached for his hat, then looked at her again. She was humming that same tune she always did, low, steady, full of warmth. He didn't need fancy words or promises. He simply said, "You make this house feel alive, Martha." She looked at him, her smile gentle. "And you make me feel safe, Ethan." The night grew still. Bandit lay sleeping near the door. The fire crackled softly, and the world seemed calm at last. In the quiet of that western night, a cowboy who once wrote letters to a stranger finally found what he had truly been searching for. Not the bride he ordered, but the heart he didn't know he needed. And Martha, the woman twice his size, had found the one man strong enough to see past everything else, to see her for who she truly was.